Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to another Honda video. What we're going to do this time is actually delete my cruise control because A, it doesn't work, and B, I don't want it anyway, so I don't want to bother fixing it. Don't need it really. I don't use it. I wouldn't use it if I had it. My truck doesn't have it either, so we're going to get rid of it for weight reduction's sake and clean up some of the messiness under the engine bay, because this entire line right here is for the cruise control. It goes all over the valve cover and everything and over the intake. Doesn't really look good. And that whole box there, this whole thing right here is all cruise control related, so we're going to get rid of it, free up some space, make it look a little nicer in here. So I'm going to get to work here. I think the first thing that I'm going to go ahead and do is remove, there's a bolt right here. I'm going to take that out, and I think that's a bracket for this thing, and we'll see what that loosens up, and then we'll go from there. So after taking off that bolt down here, I found that there's another bolt back here on the firewall. Took that one out, and now this whole assembly is kind of loose here. This connector right here is actually what plugs in to the cruise control setup itself, so I'm going to unplug that or take it off of this bracket here because it's sort of locked in there. This little rubber piece is going to slip off of this for this particular connector to come off, and then there's some vacuum lines down there that I'm just going to undo, and yeah, I guess we'll go from there. Alright, so I got the connectors both off and I was able to fish this thing out. It's a little tight, but not too bad. So now I got the whole assembly out here. I just gotta worry about getting the cable off, and this vacuum line right here goes over to a pipe, and that ends up on the intake manifold here. So I'm just gonna pull this off with some pliers and maybe cut it down a little bit and thread a bolt in there just to plug that so I don't have a vacuum leak, and yeah, that should be it. Almost there. So these two cables here that are hooked up to the throttle, there's one on the bottom and one on the top. The one on the bottom is the one that does the cruise control. So if I pull on this cable here, it pulls that second throttle there, which also pulls the main throttle. So I'm just going to take that cable off. I'm going to see if I can get some slack in it by undoing the two nuts that are locked together there, and then slide it out the other side. There's like a notch, and then I should be able to get enough slack to get it off of this assembly right here. I think there's two Phillips screws. Oops, one's right there, and then on the underside maybe. So I'm going to take this Phillips off and see if I can get that whole thing off of there as well. So you can see here I was able to slide this one nut all the way down, and there's like a little area that's smaller, and that's the area that slides out of that little notch that you see right there. So I was able to get the slack there, and that slack allowed me to unhook it from this guy right here. And so now I'm going to use this Phillips to get in here. It's going to be a little tough to get to the lower one, but once that comes off, then this entire assembly should just thread right out. So in order for me to actually get this lower Phillips head screw right here that was in that hole, the upper one I could get, I had to actually take the intake clamp off and pull it off of the throttle body here just so that I could get to that screw. But now that I did, the entire cable came off. I have it right here. So now all I gotta do is pull this vacuum line off, and there we go. That's that. So I'm gonna put a bolt in this, and then I'll start it up, make sure I don't have any vacuum leaks or anything, which I shouldn't, but actually that was the wrong hose. This is the correct hose to pull. There we go. So we got it. There it is. Cruise control no longer required. So the last thing you got to worry about is that vacuum line. So what I did here was I took one of the bolts that I actually took out of the cruise control itself, and I threaded it into the vacuum line right here, and then I put a zip tie around it. Like, I threaded it really hard with a socket, and so it's not pulling out of there. It's not going to leak any air. Or what you could do is, what I'm going to do eventually, if you have something that needs a vacuum line, like my vacuum gauge on the inside of the car, it's like a vacuum and boost gauge, I have it teed into this line, which goes to this thing over here. But I think what I might do is take a piece of that line over there that's nice and new, run it from this port on the intake over to here, and get rid of this T here, and then put this right on the back of the intake port, exactly where the other one went for the cruise control. So then it'll sort of clean it up a little bit, get rid of this T in here, you know, just make it a little bit nicer overall. And then this bracket right here can now come off, as well as this bracket right here. So once the two of those come off, it'll, you know, look nicer on the valve cover and everything. I'm going to be doing a head gasket pretty soon, so I'll just wait on this one right here until I take the valve cover off, and I just won't put it back on. But yeah, stay tuned, guys. Thanks for watching the video. Let me know if you have any questions. But pretty soon is going to be a head gasket job coming up on this thing. Within the next week or two, I'm going to get started on it. You know, I'm going to try to freshen it up while I'm in there, clean the carbon off the valves and things like that, and do a little bit of valve lash adjustment just to make everything run that much smoother. So this will be preemptive head gasket change, and I also have all new coolant hoses. They're pretty cool looking. So, because inside of my coolant jug here, it's just black and nasty in there, and you know, I don't think it's oil, because I don't know, it doesn't like show up in the radiator itself, and you would think that it floats to the top, it would be in the radiator as well as in the coolant jug. So I think it might be the deterioration of the old coolant hoses, because some of these are pretty nasty and oil soaked down there on the bottom. So I got all new coolant hoses. I'm going to change those, flush the coolant, flush the heater core because the heat doesn't work in the car. And yeah, so all that's coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.